text. Look at the writing on this tombstone. This is a ledger. This is the slab of stone that sits on top of a grave. This means dead. This is the tombstone, and the writing on the tombstone, which is written in a dog Latin text, a debased Latin, known as, in Black's Law Dictionary, it's known as the Latin for the illiterate, which is really strange, isn't it? It's a text that, in the English language, means debased. In the Webster's Dictionary, dog Latin is a debased form of text, which means criminal, debauched, immoral, and against God. Now, the strange thing here is, this is a presumption that this reads Alfred Henry Madams. But if all the grammatical rules and everything that this text is governed by is correct, then this tombstone does not say Alfred Henry Madams at all. Because when you use this type of ancient Latin text, or this type of Latin symbolic text, it has to be hyphenated between the sides in order to string the sentence together. So what this ledger is, grammatically, is a lie. Just like all of these tombstones that exist in this place, in this graveyard. The strange thing about it is this ledger is a 2-to-1 ratio, this slab of stone that sits on top of a grave. And these ledgers that come in the mail, that also house the same all uppercase type of letter of text. It's also found on your banking contracts, your contracts with the government, the power companies, etc. That ledger text that's found on the tombstones is also found in these ledgers that come in the mail, that are also a 2-to-1 ratio, exactly the same as the ledger that sits on top of a tomb. A normal letter isn't, and even a registered postal letter that you go to the post office and get a registered mail, they're not the same size. It's not a 2-to-1 ratio. But these things with the ledgers come in, and the writing, the ledger text writing, just like the dead ledger text here comes in there. This is also, well, like a coffin, a tomb. And I think what's happening is that when you break the seals of these envelopes, it's like breaking the seal of a grave. That's a bad conduct to do that. This ledger text is also an engraved image, because the people that make these tombstones are engravers. And God warned not to go near this text here. So it just goes to show, what's happening to us. A dead man has no rights. So maybe what the new modern style of government, or maybe what governments have always tried to do in the past, is render the living man as nothing more than a dead corpse, a corporation, the dead speaking. And by conferring its dead accounts to man, it deceives us by this grammatical deception with these texts that we assume we can read as English, and we spend our whole life reading this text here, when in fact it's not English. This text is not even ancient Latin. This is dog Latin, debased Latin, which destroys the essence of the text, which destroys the meaning of it. So by the time you get through life and you wind up inside one of these graves, under one of these ledgers, with this type of writing on your tomb, that means that your life or your footprint or your birthright to this land, the recognition of you that was living, is now pronounced dead. And when you wind up under one of these graves, this type of debased, dog Latin, immoral, debauched text written on your tombstone, I think that you've made it into hell. And I think the serpent or the usurper that did this to you takes your estate, your link to the mineral and the energy wealth. It takes your dominion. What God granted to you has been taken by the serpent. I think you've got to be more vigilant. Remember what Christ said? You've got to learn to read the sign. And if you can read the sign, then you will know that that is sign, sin, immoral, debased, and against God. Grammatical deceptions. In 1966, we lost the pound and we converted it into dollars, pounds and dollars. The pound was a weighted note on silver, was equivalent to 1 pound of silver. So it was a monetary system that operated on actual weights of metal, shillings and pennies and what have you, florins, whatever it was. It was all based on an amount of silver, and the pound note was a representation of 1 pound of silver. So you could take the pound note in and redeem it for 1 pound of silver. In 1966, that changed from a dollar, from a pound to a promissory note system, like the US Federal Reserve promissory note system. But something else changed in 1966 as well. And what happened was our schools removed grammar and Latin from the schools in 1966. So prior to that, at school we learned grammar and Latin. And Latin were the roots of the English language, or many of the roots of the English language. So and my father used to call Latin the math of English. And when in 1966, when the school got rid of Latin and grammar out of their curriculum, my father bitterly complained to the school and said that the students will become illiterate. They won't know how to read if you take those things out of the curriculum. Well, I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. It's strange that this happened in 1966 too, when the pound went to the dollar, and grammar and Latin were removed from the schools. So it's funny that is. But I'm going to just show you just how stupid and dumbed down Australians have become in a grammatical deception, or in a grammatical sense. I'm going to write Commonwealth of Australia into 3 different formats, and you will be able to read the whole 3 of them, or you will assume you can read the 3 of them. But after I've done this, I'll just explain the difference between the 3 of them. Okay? First, let's write it in English. Read that, Commonwealth of Australia. Now let's write it in ancient Latin, and this is going to be strange. Not many people are aware of this, or aware that it's relevant today. But ancient Latin is the official language of the Vatican. That's strange too, isn't it? So I'll write that. Okay, same words. Hyphen. Australia, written in an ancient Latin style text. And we have here, which is the two hyphens in between the three signs or the three words. Now I'm going to write something in Dog Latin. And Dog Latin is a corruption of the essence of the text. It's also known as the text or the Latin for the illiterate. So it's a language that's used by illiterate people that can't read, that don't know what's going on. I'll write the same words. English, ancient Latin with the hyphens, and Dog Latin. The Latin for the illiterate, people that can't read. Now, English, these are all three very recognised languages. But the thing about the grammatical standing of these three types of written language is that they don't have any jurisdiction with each other on the one document. So if you've got a page of text and it contains English and contains Dog Latin, there is no correspondence between those two languages written on that paper. And that's the reason why when the currency of our nation, of our country, was changed from a weighted silver, which was a de jure or real money, into a promissory note type of a money, which is based on the United States Federal Reserve promissory notes, which is really called a company scrip or internal accounting notes. That's all it is, internal banking notes. After that happened in 1966, they removed the grammar and the Latin from the school in order that the people start to assume that this is English. Now, you know something's wrong with that. If you saw that written everywhere and you saw a hyphen in between the words, even if you didn't know your Latin and your grammar, you would instantly know, well, that doesn't look right, there's something wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It is another language. But when you read this here, Commonwealth of Australia, without the hyphens, you will assume that to be English. And that mistake that has deliberately been allowed for you to do is actually what destroys you from standing as a true Australian, a national, or being a part of the real Australia, into coming down here into being a foreign citizen of a private foreign bank. But all of the Australians that are in here, such as the Queensland Police, the government, all the government workers and all that, they believe that they are Australians. They believe that. But grammatically, and the fact, as a fact stands, they are the account holders of the foreign United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the foreign United States Federal Reserve, because this is a registered company with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, written in Dog Latin. And Dog Latin, the way they make Dog Latin is by using the grammatical rules of English and mixing it with the written hieroglyphic, all uppercase text of ancient Latin. And by removing the hyphens, they use the grammatical rules of English instead of the grammatical rules of Latin, which are two very different types of rules, grammatical rules of each one of these texts, in order to make it look like normal English. That is the grammatical deception. I call it the Justinian deception, because this whole system of deceiving people into going from the public, common English, going from common English public into the private contracts of Rome, the private contracts of Babylonian texts, of fiction, of a lie, is done through the grammatical deception of making you believe that this text is English when it has no jurisdiction whatsoever. So if you get your driver license or your passport and you assume that your name, where it says your name, and your name is written in an all uppercase dog Latin text that is really a hieroglyphic sign or illustrative text, it's symbolic text which cannot be a name. Only a name can only exist in proper English as a capitalized with the first letters of each word capitalized, that forms a true name. Now that you understand that, if you go onto the website under the Governor General, and you will start to see just how confusing things start to happen. Even if you ring the Governor General, ring the office and ask him, they've written hyphen which is right, but what that is doing, when they write Governor General in the all uppercase text that is in ancient Latin, what they're saying is that this Governor General belongs to the Vatican. But then what they do, they've got that written on the website, which is now in proper ancient Latin, with the hyphen there, which renders the two signs, governor and general, coming together as two signs in order to make one sentence inside. But then when they write it in English, in the common English up here, the correct language, they write it like this. They hyphenate the English. Very clever trick that these usurping foreign corporations, these foreign corporate banks are doing to the people of Australia. Because what that does is destroys the English text, because to create, to make two words appear as one name, as in Governor General, this would translate as this. Governor Grunow. Because that hyphen there used to join in English, is used to join a broken word back together, or join two words together as one. And that's how some words are made before the word is actually made into one word. The hyphen is used until eventually, as time goes by, the word becomes one. But at this present time, in the dictionary, there is no such word as Governor-General, and there's also no such words or name as Governor-General with a hyphen. It does not exist in the English language. So what they're saying is that this Governor-General is the property of the Vatican. The Vatican owns the City of London. The City of London owns probably more than likely owns the US Federal Reserve. And the City of London is the bar. And the bar are all the lawyers. So any lawyer that is in government, such as the Prime Ministers and what have you, most of them are, or the very Prime Minister that signed us up to Unidroit, in 1973 was Gough Whitlam, who was a lawyer who had sworn an oath to the bar, and the bar was the City of London, which is 1 square mile inside London, that belongs to the Vatican. So what's happened is somehow or other, the Vatican has taken away the proper, true government of Australia and replaced it with one of their corporations. But the only problem with the Vatican, even though it operates under proper, recognised ancient Latin signs, we have been given a fraud. This is a fraud. It's not real. I'm not sure what it is all about, but I do notice that the Vatican seems to always be plundering the riches of the world. So maybe through this sort of a system. They also give us, on your driver licences, as I said before, your driver licences, your passports, etc. You also get your name written in all uppercase dog Latin, without the hyphens. That's dog Latin. So the dog Latin is the language for the illiterate. It's Babylonian text. It's text that reads absolutely nothing. If you translate this Governor-General without the hyphen, English simply translates back like this. Full stop. General. Full stop. Because Governor-General, written in dog Latin, which is using the ancient Latin text with the grammatical rules of English, renders this as Governor full stop General, which is not the Governor-General. And that is same with your name. Written in that, like on your driver license or on your passport, etc., translates to full stop, full stop, full stop. So the whole system is a lie. It's just an absolute lie, because they are using a dog Latin text, which is a debased text under Latin, under the legal dictionary, Black's Law Dictionary. Dog Latin is the Latin for the illiterate, for the stupid people that can't read. But in the English dictionary, the Webster's English Dictionary, dog Latin is a debased text, a debased language. And the word debased means, in Webster's Dictionary. Criminal. It also means debauched. It also means immoral. So that means it is against God. You have to also remember that the people that are ruling this type of dog Latin world, this fake government, are people like the Fabians, who believe in governments like Hitler and like Stalin, which maintains total control over the people. It puts the state ahead of the people, which is absolutely dangerous, because we all know the history of Hitler and Stalin and other governments in the past, Pol Pot, that have used this type of system where the state becomes more powerful than the people. But the only way that the state in the past has come more powerful is guns. But this lot of governments, this new world order, are doing it through deception, deceit, lies, trickery. And once they've gotten hold of a Hitler-style or Stalin-style government as a one complete world government, then who is there to stop them? They will have achieved their absolute goal at total control over the population of the planet. And then the culling will start. I'll say it's for the better, but it only suits them. It suits them. Doesn't suit these. It suits the Vatican, and it suits their corporations, and it also suits the one-stroke dollar. It's the biggest lie that's perpetrated. It is the biggest grammatical deception perpetrated against the people of Australia, the people of the world. And that's how they did it, through the grammatical deceptions. I'm going to show you sort of the rank of how the governments sort of really work. It's a system where one would assume that the President of the United States holds sort of the highest rank because he's got the biggest military or whatever. But that's not quite so. There's ranks higher than him that he must obey, so to speak. And if he doesn't obey those ranks, well, then he could destroy the whole system. But I'm going to try and explain, or show you, give you a schematic or a diagram of just where these ranks, or how this rank works, and where you, as a man, or as a Christian, or as a pagan, sits in this rank. And but just before we do that, the English explanation of this word here, it just simply says a system in which members of an organisation or society are ranked according to relative statutes or authority. Now there's two things happening in there: relative statutes or authority. And each meridium or each trust has its own version of laws and statutes and authority, but the trust itself may be answerable to trusts above it. that's the other thing where some government workers and some police officers and what have you, even some lawyers, are not quite understanding this, the way this system really works. This is a quick rundown of just how the authority kind of works. And first of all, we have God. This God is the God of existence. This God is the one that created all the things that we can see, the world, and that God is the one that we don't really understand. We'll never really comprehend how this whole thing exists or is made, and we don't really have any ability to question that either, because even in trust law, as the hierarchy goes down, this type of system, the lower ranking officers are subordinate to the higher ranking officers. So we'll just see this. And even in the Bible it says never put God to the test, because of the type of system that we're dealing with. It's a trust law system. The next thing is man. God, man. Now, you know, in Adam and Eve and in Genesis, God created man and breathed the life into man after he made him from the earth. And this is basically stating that man has a birthright to the subject matter. He's a part of this world, because this God created the world and also created man in it. That is our true God. But I'm going to sort of show you how we're losing this God, so you've got to be careful. The next thing that happened was in the Garden of Eden, God granted dominion, which is the highest of authority, to man. And what man did, what happened in this, by granting the absolute authority, the legal title to man, that granted the equitable title with God. So man was holding the legal title to God. God was the director, and this is still evident, because when this God decides to have a volcano or create a massive earthquake or create a massive storm, there's not much that man can do about it. That's the fury of God. This God, no matter what you do, hate him or love him, whatever happens, you can't question that, and you can't do much about it either, because his fury is of the greatest. And sometimes those storms and that remind us of the respect that we have, or that we should be having, for this God up here. What happened is God granted the legal title to man, so that means man looks after this planet. He's duty bound to look after it. But what he has done, or what's been offered to man, is this thing here, which is called the Vatican. And what that means is V-A-T-I-C-A-N. Vatican, which means that I can, which means holder, I can. And that's the third rank down now. This is the beast of burden. And he's offered this up to man, and what he said is, you give me the legal title, and I will give you the equitable title, and I will then serve all the debts, settle all the debts of the meridian of the Garden of Eden, which is the earth. So then he controls he looks out, he's the debtor, becomes the debtor of man. But man created this. God didn't create it, man did. So the God of the Vatican is man. That's Adam. That means man. Adam means man. Now, why would someone want to pay the debts of man? And that's because this people here, it knows how to confer the debts of man back onto man. Now the next hierarchy down is the debtor. So the Vatican creates a debtor for the Vatican. Man created the debtor to pay the debts of man. It's the Vatican. The Vatican creates a debtor. Babylon. Which means baby for long time. That's what Babylon is. Baby and long, L-O-N. In Latin, it's just child, and lon, L-O-N, means for a long time. And that's probably what the surnames and the infant surname, an infant, so that when you're born, you're birthed into this state of Babylon here, which is really also really or the Roman Empire, or it's the debtor of Rome. And what Babylon does, then it needs to create a debtor. This is the Vatican, and this is really Rome. Babylon is Babel, the old Babylonian text and everything. It's in the Bible. It's Babylon's been recognised. It exists, and it exists today. The United States, the Pentagon, that's Babylon. I'll even show you why with the Babylonian text as well. And what Babylon has done is it created a creditor and a debtor. Creditor and a debtor. And this is what they talk about in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Tree of life, tree of knowledge, creditor, debtor. And these two things were accounts. So Babylon had to create a remedy inside this, and to get man to pay his own debts is to turn man into either the debtor of Babylon, so that Babylon could be the debtor of the Vatican, so then the Vatican could be the debtor of man, so that man is the debtor of God. But what this thing here is trying to do is get rid of man, because this is the serpent, the usurper, usurps in, and if it can get rid of man, that all of the debts that are paid to Babylon and then to the Vatican, if man isn't there, then he gets to keep the loot, keep the gold, keep all of the debts of man. Vatican, the very symbol is also Vatican, Holder-I-Can, and Holder is like a valley, which is the banks of a river. It is the first bank. That is the bank. There, that is the director of the flow of current, the currency, in relation to a charge, when charges are forced against us. Now the trick down here to create the creditor and the debtor, these two accounts are called the Christian and the pagan. Christian and pagan account. So how does it get you to make how does it get you to hold the pagan account, which really means the pay again account? Pagan, pay again. So why this is paying again is because man's already paid. It's already, his debts are paid by the Vatican. But the Vatican are going to get man to pay the debts again for the second time. So now we have God, then man. Man created the Vatican, the first debtor. The Vatican created Babylon. And Babylon created two accounts, the Christian account and the pagan account. The creditor, the debtor, life and knowledge, L and K, kill, L-I-F-E, life and kill. Now, there's two warnings. When God said to man, he said, whatever you do, you never eat from the tree of knowledge. Don't eat, otherwise you will surely die. That was the warning. Now, in the New Testament, Christ came along and he said that in my name only, my name, which is the name of an account, shall you be saved. My name only. So now we have these two accounts, which is the creditor, the debtor, the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, life, death, death, life. We have, they're called accounts. So this account is the account of the creditor. This is the account of the debtor. Now, how do we get man to hold the accounts of the debtor? This is probably one of the biggest tricks where the birth certificates and everything come into being. Now we'll name the account and we'll just show you what's going on. This is the name. This is the name and surname. Have you noticed that's on your birth certificate? And then when you look at your birth certificate, let's talk about John Paul Smith. John Paul When you look at your birth certificate, you're going to see this, and it will say name and surname. Now that's what you will assume, but there's no surname on that document, on the certificate of birth. But there is a name, John Paul, as your Christian name or given name, and then it says surname, and then that's where the Smith will be, the surname. That's made you sort of assume that's your surname. And then when someone asks you, like a police officer or someone from the state, from the Babylonian state, which is the, at the moment, it is probably the United States Securities and Exchange Commission that owns all of the nations of the world, as well as Canada and as well as Commonwealth of Australia and as well as the United States. Babylon owns these things, and that in modern day is more than likely the US Federal Reserve, which is that bank, and the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. So if you go into Canada or Commonwealth of Australia or any of the corporations, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Microsoft, if you look at these companies, Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, they are all registered to the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. So they all stem from the one world government, Babylon. Now, when you look at your name, John Paul Smith, if you're illiterate and you don't know what's going on and you haven't been taught how to read the signs at school, just remember what Christ said. He said, in my name only shall you be saved. And then the other thing he stressed was, you must learn to read the sign. Because there's two things happening in this: English and sign. That is called a Babylonian, or it's actually called a Latin or ancient Latin symbolic text. This is a descriptive text. It's completely and utterly different. But if you're an illiterate pleb actually is what they'll call you, this is what you will assume this name to be. So when a police officer comes to you and says, what's your name and your date of birth, you'll say, oh, sir, my name is John Paul Smith. And yet, the name written on the birth certificate says John Paul. So straight away, someone's made an error, someone's made a mistake. And if you're the one that's claiming John Paul Smith to be your full name, when John Paul is your full name on the birth certificate, then that police officer has been trained to, as soon as you give a full name, which includes your surname, which is incorporated with your real name, it's an incorporation, and a presumption, he will take authority over you straight away. And what it is, under a form of water law salvage rights, because you're not John Paul, you claim to be John Paul Smith, and John Paul Smith, in law and in fact and in reality, John Paul Smith does not exist. Only John Paul in fact exists. John Paul in reality and in fact, John Paul Smith in reality and fact does not exist. So that enters them into the world of fictions. So rather than you being a man, you will become down here a human. A human, which is the colour of man. Now when you look at the dictionaries again, a human is a monster. And then when you go into monster, the word monster is a fiction. A monster is a fiction. John Paul Smith is a monster because he is a fiction. Also a human. And the other thing which is very strange about this is the minute you incorporate any two items together, any two things together that are incorporated in relation to the Vatican or the water law, it becomes a person. And a person is a corporation, corp speaking, which means dead. So through your own ignorance, what you're stating here is that you are a surname who is dead. Now, no one forced you to do this. You did that. You claimed your name to be the incorporated name because John Paul and Smith don't exist. They exist as two separate entities, but they don't exist as one name. So you're the one that did that. You're the one through your own ignorance and your own inability to assume that you are right. Yet Christ comes along and said, no, you've got to learn how to read the sign. He didn't tell you what the sign, he just said, you learn how to read the sign. Well, if you know how to read the sign, you'll know straight away that, oh no, that's sign, that's not my name. That's no part of it. Sign is sin. Sign is sin. That's what it means. Even the words, S is the snake, I is one, is you, I, and N, S-I-G, which is a governance, and N is mountain and water, which is the Babylonian, which it's not Babylonian. It's the two sides. It's the name and the surname. It is the creditor and the debtor. M is the mountain, and water is the sea. This is the mountain, which is land. This is the sea. But the N, when written, is the two combined. So in the symbolism, when it looks the symbol, this is the snake, which is Satan. You've become dead through your own false presumption that you thought that your name, John Paul, with the all uppercase symbolic Smith, was one name. And the minute you incorporated it and you assumed that, this is what you became: human, a fiction, a person, a corporation, dead, and of course a monster. And monsters have to be controlled under statute law. So you've been under the control of statute law, which is not free will, which is under what Satan wanted. You're under the control of Satan. And Satan did not give man the free right to make a choice. God gave man the free right to make a choice, to enter into the debtor or the creditor. But how you make that choice is by learning what Christ said, by studying the Bible and working out how the Adam and Eve trusts about in relation to 126 of Genesis, where God granted dominion to man over the land, the air, the sea, and the thing that creepeth. Now, if you put surname into the Latin dictionary, surname means the thing that creepeth up from below. So what's happened is man has been given dominion over the surname, which is the person, which is the human, which is the fiction, which is the dead corporation. But if you hold any sort of document from the government, such as a driver license, a bank card, or a bank account, or even hold the legal title to your home, if you hold any one of those things, you're dead. You're in the tree of knowledge. You're a debtor. You hold the legal title to it, and you have lost your equity, because in trust law, he who holds legal title cannot touch the equity without license. And this goes right back to the Garden of Eden, because when Adam ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, which is the tree of the debtor, when he applied for the credit card, the minute he did that, he was thrown out of the first garden. And the only way he could get back into the Garden of Eden is was under license. Now remember that maxim. He who holds legal title cannot hold the equity without license. And the license to hold the equity is granted from Babylon, which is the Vatican, which is the bank. So when you sit down here, when you're dead, then you need a license to do anything at all. And that's what's happening to you. You want to go fish, you want to do anything, you want to drive a car, because anything you do in Eden, well, while you're the debtor, you must have a license. Now remember what Christ said over here. He said, in my name you shall be saved. So what happens is this name here, John Paul, is the creditors. The creditor. And because Christ said, in my name you shall be saved, means that you still are living. You are not dead. You are not a fiction. You are not human. You are not a person. You are not a corporation. You are a Christian. There it is there. You are not a pagan. You are simply a true Christian. The Christians that go into the church that you see on every Sunday, they are not Christians. They are pagans. They believe that they're Christian. And that's what this thing is doing. He's the usurper. He's the trickster. Satan is always the Lucifer, the illusionist, where he presents himself as God. Because persons, the only God of a person, which is the only God of a debtor, is Babylon, which is the Vatican. The Vatican created these things here. The Vatican created the incorporation, when two names or two things are joined together. That's it. But when you're Christ, you only have one name. You don't hold any legal title, anything. When you learn how to operate this account, this Christian account over here, you will start to realize that you can have anything you want. Ask and you shall receive. And that's how it really does work. Now, the account name, just to finish off, this is where the real trick has been in here. The Christian account, or the credit account, is John Paul. And the debtor account is the surname. The surname is not just the Smith, because John Paul and the Smith belong to us. That's our name, and this is our heritage. So both names belong to us. So the state can't make a claim over the family name or the heritage or the Christian or the given name. It cannot make a claim. But what it makes a claim over is incorporation. So as soon as these two names are assumed as one, that is the property of the Vatican. That is the state of affairs of that governing system. This is the Christian account written in proper English, and that is the debtor account, the pagan account. That is, so if you hold this name here in proper English, you become the debtor. So when you walk into a court and say, I'm walking into this court, I am a living, breathing man, well, yes, you might very well be that. But the magistrate, who's the administrator, which is Babylon, and the administration, well, it's here. That's what this thing is. There's the I on the bill. The administrator, which is the magistrate, the man will walk in, I am the living, breathing man, Your Honour. And he will say, yeah, well, that's fine. Do you hold a driver license? Yes. What's your name? my name is John Paul Smith. Well, the magistrate is obligated to set up a salvage trust, salvation, for this, because this person down here, this man, has been lost at sea. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know his own name. And there's another maxim, is if you know not the name of the thing itself is surely lost. So if you walk into the court and say, I'm the man, but my name is John Paul Smith, and I hold a driver license, the poor old magistrate, he's just saying, what can I do about this? Okay, so he sets up a trust, and then gives him a little bit of justice that seemed to be done to make him feel a bit better, but still whacks him anyway, and whacks him as a debtor. And then once he's got the debt, he can't get out of it. You've got to pay, because debtors pay the bills. And if you're one of these, the full-on debtor, that's agreed to be John Paul Smith, because you read John Paul and the Smith in sign language and you assume it together. That's not his problem. You assume that. You didn't do your homework. You didn't learn how to read the sign. You didn't learn your grammar. You learned nothing. You remained as a pleb, as a dumb idiot, as someone that's... You just remained dumb. So the magistrate, he's just got to administer you. The Vatican, he's got to administer all of you. So what he does is that he throws you on the Vatican ship at sea, in the Holy See, and you lose all your rights then to land law. You lose your standing as man and as Adam, and only because God said, whatever you do not eat from the tree, or do not eat the fruit, be a usufruct of the debtor account. Don't do that. Otherwise, you will surely die. There's you there. so that's how the system works. I know it's got nothing to do with law. It's all got to do with God and Christ, because they're the ones that taught you. They're the ones that, the Bible sits in the court for that reason. If anyone says that it's not spiritual, of course it's spiritual, because when you walk into those law courts, or those courts, they're not courts, they're tribunals, they're chambers, and a chamber is a tomb. They're dead. That's why the magistrate's wearing that black robe. He's mourning the dead, and you're walking in there and you are dead. And you probably go, poor fellas, they're all dead. And very rarely does any one of these ones come into that court. Now the other slight advice, it's not really advice, but it's when you know where you stand and you are over here and you do hold the driver licenses and you hold the bank loans and you are a good little debtor and you're paying all the bills of the state, and which is very admirable of you for being that. And I think sometimes the state will thank you if you're a hard worker. You will get a good life inside the state. But when it comes into a charge, when you've been charged with any form of a charge account, and you are the debtor and you hold the driver license to prove that you're a debtor, because the name of the driver license is written in the all uppercase language, which is called the ledger language, or the dead ledgers that are on tombstones, or it's also called an engraved image, which is another thing that God said, do not worship the engraved images, which are the engraved images that sit on top of the tombstones, which is the ledgers, and that's the stuff that comes in the mail. But in a court, if you are a debtor and you know that you're a debtor, then no matter if you're guilty, no matter if you're not guilty, if you've been charged, then my absolute advice to you is to plead guilty. Still state the case, but make the guilty plea. Because in the United States legal code, the enemy of the United States, which is the enemy of Babylon, the enemy of the administrator, is the belligerent officer. And the belligerent officer is the one that pleads not guilty. Because if you walk into a court, you're walking into the court saying, well, yes, I am the debtor and I'm not going to pay your debt. That's what you're saying. The other thing, what it does in a legal sense, the magistrates love it when you plead not guilty, because the minute you plead not guilty, you violate the military codes, which is the law of the sea, the Holy See, and you put yourself into a state of conflict. And once you're in a state of conflict in military law, the administrator has right to administer the conflict. So you're handing over all of the power over you to the state, because you have become the enemy of the state.